I am Harper Wilson, 27 years old. I worked in marketing in Seattle. I was married to Andrew, a successful but cold doctor. His mother, Donna, always saw me as a threat to the family fortune. One day, I disappeared from society in the eyes of everyone I left. In reality, they locked me in Andrew's soundproof room. If you love real-life stories, chilling revenge, and dark family secrets, hit that subscribe button now. You're about to step into a world where the truth is far more terrifying than fiction. If you type my name into Google now, you'll see headlines. Doctor's wife claims she was held captive for 3 months. Harper Wilson, the woman who vanished inside her own home. But the day I really disappeared didn't look dramatic at all. It started with coffee. I was standing at this kitchen counter of our townhouse in Seattle, watching the rain streak down the window, when Andrew walked in, already in his dark blue scrubs, stethoscope hanging around his neck like a badge of honor. He kissed my cheek, not too quickly, not too slow, just long enough for any outsider to think, "What a sweet couple." "Morning, Harp," he said. "You forgot to grind the beans fine enough again." That was it. No good morning, kiss on the lips. No, how did you sleep? Just a quiet criticism wrapped in casual conversation. "Sorry," I murmured. "I'll fix it tomorrow." He didn't answer. He never did. When I apologized, it was as if my apology vanished into the same void where my sense of self had been slowly disappearing since we got married. Andrew Wilson was the kind of man people trusted without thinking. A highly respected anesthesiologist, calm, articulate, the one families looked to in hospital corridors, and asked, "Is my son going to be okay?" He knew how to hold someone's gaze and make them feel like they were the only person in the world. I'd fallen for that gaze hard. We met at a fundraiser 5 years ago, one of those polished events where everyone pretends they're not exhausted and underpaid. I worked in marketing at a mid-sized tech company back then, creating campaigns, pitching ideas, staying late, eating stale donuts. He walked over with a drink, made a joke about the terrible playlist, and within 15 minutes, I was laughing like a teenager. Back then, he listened. Or at least I thought he did. "Dinner with my mom tonight," Andrew reminded me as he poured his coffee. 6 sharp. "Don't be late this time, you know how she is." I remember. My stomach tightened. "I'll be ready." He glanced at my leggings and oversized sweatshirt. "And wear something appropriate." She's still trying to accept that I married someone who works in marketing, not medicine. "That's not really something I can change," I said, trying to sound light. "You could have gone back to school," he replied too casually. "You still could." I bit back the retort that bubbled up. There was a time when I would have said, "I like my job, Andrew." Now I just reached for my mug and pretended the steam fogging my face could hide me. He checked his smartwatch. "I have an early intubation. Text me if you're going to be late." And then he was gone. The front door clicked shut. Silence filled the house like water slowly rising, threatening to drown me. I checked my phone. 3 unread messages from my best friend Mia. "Mia, yo bailed on brunch again." "Mia, if he's isolating you, that's not busy, that's a red flag, Mia. Call me." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the call icon. I could still hear Mia's voice from our last conversation. "This isn't you, Harp. You used to be loud, messy. You used to dream about starting your own creative agency. Now you just orbit around him." I defended Andrew, of course. "He's under so much pressure at work. He's just stressed." Stressed. The word I'd used to cover too many sins. I typed back, "I'm fine. I promise I'll call you later. Dinner with his mom tonight. Pray for me." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Mia was still angry. I couldn't blame her. Donna Wilson lived 15 minutes away in a gray, cold house that looked like it had been designed by a committee of angels who'd never actually met a human being. Everything was spotless. White walls, chrome surfaces, glass tables. You could slice your finger on. "Harper," she said when she opened the door. No hug. Just my name, flat and cool. "You're on time." Improvement. "Hi, Donna," I forced a smile. "You look nice." She did. Her silver hair was pinned back in a French twist, pearl earrings perfectly centered. Donna had retired from being a head nurse at one of the best hospitals in the city, and she never let me forget it. We sat down to eat. The conversation flowed around me like a current I was supposed to swim in but always felt I was drowning in instead. And Dr. Patel's daughter just got into Johns Hopkins. Donna was saying she's only 22, so driven, so impressive. That's great, I said, picking at my mashed potatoes. And what do you do now, Harper? Donna asked, her voice sweetly poisonous. Still, what is it again? Content. Marketing brand strategy. I reached for my water I handle. She's taking some time off. Andrew cut in smoothly, his eyes flicking to me with a warning I felt more than saw. We're discussing what's next. We are, I asked quietly. Yes, he replied, still smiling at his mother, we are. Donna's lips curved into a satisfied little smirk. Good. I always thought you had potential. Harper. You just need direction. Translation, you need Andrew to mold you. I swallowed my anger along with a too large bite of chicken. The urge to stand up, slam my fork down and say, actually, I had a life before your son was so strong. I had to curl my toes inside my shoes to stop myself. Speaking of direction, Donna continued, Andrew told me you've been moody lately. I'm fine, I said automatically. She's been forgetful, Andrew added. Missed some appointments, lost track of time. I'm a little worried about her stress levels. Maybe depression. The words hit me like a slap. What are you talking about? I whispered. He looked at me, his face the picture of concern. Babe, you know you've been overwhelmed. It's not an accusation. I just want you to be okay. Donna's gaze sharpened. Mental health issues run in families. Harper, did your mother ever? I pushed my chair back, breath hitching. I need some air. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and gripped the edge of the sink until my knuckles turned white. My reflection stared back at me, pale dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun, 27 years old and already looking like I'd been fighting a private war no one else could see. Get it together, I whispered to myself. It's just dinner. But something inside me had shifted. Andrew wasn't just criticizing me in private anymore. He was painting a picture, building a narrative. She's unstable. She's overwhelmed. She might be depressed. He was prepping an audience. And I was the show. The day I disappeared began 1 week later. It was a Thursday overcast. The kind of chilly Seattle day where the wind cuts through your coat and settles in your bones. I'd just told Andrew I wanted to go back to work. I got an email from my old boss, I said, following him into the living room as he loosened his tie. They need help on a big campaign. He asked if I'd consider coming back, at least part-time. He dropped his keys onto the entry table with a little too much force. We talked about this. No. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to continue. You talked. I listened. That's different. He turned to face me slowly. Excuse me. I want to work, Andrew. I hate being in this house all day waiting for you to come home. I miss feeling like a person. You are a person, he replied. You're my wife. That's not all I am. Silence stretched between us, taut and dangerous. I don't think now is a good time, he said finally. You haven't been yourself. I haven't been myself because I've stopped doing everything that made me who I am. His jaw tightened. There it was. The flash in his eyes I'd learned to fear. We'll talk about this when you're calmer, he said. I am calm. You're raising your voice because you're not listening. The argument escalated faster than I expected. Maybe he was tired from work. Maybe I was just done swallowing my anger. Maybe it was both. I don't understand why you're fighting me on this, I said, tears stinging my eyes. It's just a job, Andrew. It's not like I'm asking for a divorce. The word lingered in the air like a lit match. His face changed. Not into rage. That would have been easier. It turned into something colder, emptier. You know what he said quietly? You're right. We should talk about whether you're capable of making decisions right now. A chill crawled up my spine. What does that mean? He didn't answer. He picked up his phone and walked into the hallway. I heard his voice low and controlled, but not the words I assumed he was on a work call. I sat down on the couch, heart still thudding. 5 minutes later, the front door opened. Donna walked in, coat still on, eyes sharp and assessing. What are you doing here? I asked. Andrew called me, she said. He's worried about you. I just want to go back to work, I stammered. That's all? Donna's gaze flicked around the living room. My half-finished book on the coffee table, the mug in the sink, the throw blanket on the couch. evidence of a quiet life I was starting to resent. "Sweetheart," she said, voice dripping with false sympathy. "You've been under a lot of pressure. Maybe you need structure, a reset." "A reset," I repeated. "What does that even mean?" Andrew returned, slipping his phone into his pocket. "We're going to help you, Harp. But first, you have to trust us." Something inside me screamed, "Don't." He stepped closer. "I think you should come downstairs." I frowned. "Downstairs? Where?" "The spare room," he said. "The one you turned into a gym." I tried to laugh. "Why?" "Because Donna said moving behind me sometimes people need boundaries before they can heal." The back of my neck prickled. I took a step back. "I'm not going anywhere." Andrew's eyes darkened. "Harper, don't make this harder." I'd like to say I ran then, that I bolted for the front door, screamed for help, kicked and scratched and broke free. But it happened too fast. One moment I was standing there, heart pounding, and the next Andrew's hand was wrapped around my wrist tighter than it had ever been. "Let go," I said, voice shaking. "You're not thinking clearly," he murmured, like he was soothing a child. Donna moved to the front door and locked it with a soft click that sounded in that moment louder than any slam. "Stop it!" I yanked my arm, panic rising like bile. "Andrew, you're hurting me." He didn't let go. He twisted my arm behind my back, not enough to break it, but enough to send a sharp, searing jolt of pain up to my shoulder. I cried out. Donna stepped closer, hand on his elbow as if steadying him. "Take her downstairs," she said quietly. I looked at them both, my vision blurring. "You can't do this. You can't." But they could, and they did. He half dragged, half pushed me down the narrow staircase I'd always thought of as leading to nothing more sinister than dusty boxes and forgotten exercise equipment. The air grew colder, damper. The concrete floor chilled my bare feet. The spare room at the bottom of the stairs was different. The treadmill and weights were gone. In their place, there was a simple bed, a small table, and, most terrifying of all, a heavy steel bolt on the outside of the door. There was also something else. On the table, a little orange bottle with a white cap. Prescription pills. My knees nearly gave way. "Andrew, what is this?" "Just until you calm down," he said. "We'll get you evaluated." "You're not well, Harp." "I am fine," I screamed, trying to shove him away. "This is crazy. This is illegal. You can't keep me here." Donna stood in the doorway, blocking the exit, her face an unreadable mask. "You're lucky we care enough to intervene." "This isn't an intervention," I spat, tears streaming down my face. "This is prison." Andrew pushed me onto the bed. Not violently, but firmly. The kind of firm that said, "I will not be argued with." He stepped back, and for a split second I thought he might reconsider. He didn't. The door closed with a dull thud. The bolt slid into place with a metallic scrape that vibrated through my bones. I lunged for the door, pounding on it with both fists. Andrew opened the door. "Andrew." His voice came through muffled but maddeningly calm. "This is for your own good, Harper. When you're ready to behave rationally, we'll talk." "Let me out." Donna's voice joined his. "We'll bring you food and water and your medication. But you need to rest. Think about how you've been acting. You'll see we're right." Their footsteps retreated down the hallway. I kept screaming until my throat was raw, but no one came back. That was the day I disappeared. Not from the world. At least not yet. I disappeared from myself. And I had no idea that it would be 3 months before anyone outside that house even suspected I was gone. The first thing I lost was time. At the beginning, I tried to count the hours I paced the small room, tracing the same line in the concrete floor, until it felt like a scar. I counted my steps. I sang songs under my breath. I tried to guess how long it took for my breaths to fill a minute. It didn't take long before minutes, hours, and days blurred into each other. The room itself was nothing special on the surface. White walls, no windows. One single overhead light that Andrew controlled from outside. A twin bed with stiff sheets, a metal chair, the small table with the pill bottle, which I refused to touch. No clock, no phone, no way to tell sunrise from sunset, except for the vague changes in sound above me. The rush of water pipes, the muffled hum of the TV footsteps moving back and forth. The first meal came after what I guessed was a few hours. The bolt slid back. The door opened just far enough to let in a rectangle of hallway light. "Sit on the bed," Andrew said. My throat still burned from screaming. My voice came out hoarse. "Let me out! Please, sit on the bed, he repeated. I sat. He stepped in carrying a tray, soup bread, a glass of water. The smell made my stomach twist with hunger and nausea at the same time. You need to eat, he said, and take your medication, it'll help. I'm not taking anything. His eyes hardened. You're being irrational. You're being criminal. He set the tray on the table and picked up the pill bottle, shaking it so the little white tablets rattled like teeth in a skull. These were prescribed by a psychiatrist, I trust, he said. For your anxiety, you haven't been sleeping. You've been crying. You've been unpredictable. I've been unhappy, I snapped, because you've been controlling and condescending and treating me like a child. He exhaled slowly through his nose. See? This is exactly what I mean. There was a softness to his tone that made my skin crawl. He sounded like a doctor explaining a diagnosis to a patient. Detached professional. As if none of this was personal. What's your plan, I asked. Keep me down here forever? Of course not. He looked offended, as if I'd accused him of something truly unreasonable. You just need a reset. Some time to reflect. No distractions. No outside influences. You mean no friends, I said. You mean Mia? His jaw clenched. She's been a bad influence on you, filling your head with doubt, telling you I'm abusive. You are abusive. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. After everything I've done for you, he said quietly. You'd say that. You locked me in a basement, Andrew. I'm keeping you safe from yourself. I laughed. It came out high-pitched and broken. Do you hear yourself? We stared at each other for a long moment. Then he held out his hand, palm up with 2 pills resting in the center. Take these, he said. Then eat, then sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. No. His eyes darkened, Harper. No. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You already made it hard when you locked the door. He stepped closer. I scooted back on the bed, heart hammering in my chest. For a second, I thought he might hit me. Instead, he grabbed my jaw, fingers digging into my cheeks, and forced my mouth open. He shoved the pills inside. I gagged, tried to spit them out, but he clamped his other hand over my mouth and pinched my nose. Air, I needed air. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. Instinct screamed at me to swallow so I could breathe again. I did. He let go. I doubled over, coughing, tears streaming down my face. Good girl, he said, voice low and chillingly gentle. Now drink. He handed me the water. I wanted to throw it in his face. Instead, I drank, trying to wash away the chalky taste of the pills. See, he said, we can do this the easy way. He left the room and locked the door. I heard him speaking softly to someone in the hallway. Donna. Their voices faded as they walked away. The medication hit slowly like fog rolling in from the ocean. My limbs grew heavy. My thoughts dulled around the edges. Fear didn't go away, but it became distant, like it was happening to someone else. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and the last coherent thought I had before sleep dragged me under was, I cannot let this become normal. It became normal, not all at once, not even in the first week, but human beings are disturbingly adaptable. We can get used to almost anything if it happens day after day. There was a routine. In the mornings, my mornings, though I had no proof, they matched reality. The door would open. Donna would stand there with a tray, oatmeal, fruit water, sometimes tea. You'll make yourself sick if you don't eat, she'd say. Then where would we be? In jail, I'd mutter. She pretended not to hear. She always placed the pill bottle beside my glass, a silent threat. Some days she made me swallow them in front of her. Other days she seemed distracted, trusting that I'd obey. I started hiding the pills under my tongue, then spitting them into a tissue. The moment the door closed, I tore tiny holes in the underside of the mattress and tucked the tablets inside. It wasn't much, but it was resistance. A secret. A part of me they didn't control. I told myself that as long as I remembered how many pills I'd hidden, how many days had passed, I was still me. The middle of the day, what I assumed was midday, was the worst. Long stretches of nothing. No books, no TV, no internet, no one to talk to. So I talked to myself. I recited entire marketing pitches I'd given years ago, complete with hand gestures. I practiced imaginary conversations with Mia, apologizing for disappearing. I replayed old memories, like favorite songs. Our road trip to the coast, the night we danced in the rain at Gasworks Park. The afternoon we sat at a coffee shop and mapped out a dream business on a napkin. I counted everything. The cracks in the ceiling, 7. The screws in the bed frame, 12. The breaths it took before the panic in my chest eased anywhere from 50 to 200. Sometimes Andrew would visit during what I assumed were evenings. He'd stand in the doorway or step inside depending on his mood. Hands in his pockets. Dr. Mask on. "How are you feeling?" he'd ask. "Like your prisoner," I'd answer. "Like you're getting better," he'd say. He talked about me like I wasn't in the room. "You're less volatile now. You're starting to see things rationally. You don't cry as much." I'd stare at him and think I don't cry, because I'm afraid you'll decide that's another symptom to medicate. Sometimes he'd bring a notebook and ask me questions like he was screening me for a clinical trial. "Have you had thoughts of hurting yourself? Any hallucinations? Do you still believe we're doing this to punish you?" Yes, no, yes. He wrote my answers down with maddening calm. I had to stay sharp. I had to stay angry. I had to remember that what they were doing was wrong. But there were times late at night when the light was off and the silence pressed against my ears like hands. That doubt slithered in. "Maybe you are dramatic. Maybe you did push him too far. Maybe you are hard to love." I would force myself to list facts to fight the fog. Fact: I asked to go back to work. Fact: he locked me in a room. Fact: that is not love. Over and over. What I didn't know then but would later discover was that outside that basement, my absence was being carefully explained. Andrew told my boss I was taking time away for my mental health. He told Mia I'd checked into a private retreat when she demanded proof. He said I needed a clean break from triggers. He used words like breakdown and episode and trauma history, none of which I had actually been diagnosed with, but all of which sounded just plausible enough. He changed my email password, deactivated my social media. When Mia tried to visit, he told her I'd asked for space. "You're toxic for her recovery," he said. I only learned all this later. At the time, all I knew was the walls of my room, the scrape of the bolt, and the sound of my own breathing. It took longer than I'm proud of for me to realize that no one was coming. If I wanted to get out, I would have to do it myself. The turning point came sometime in what I think was the second month. I woke up from a restless sleep, heart racing. I'd dreamed I was standing on a glass floor above the city watching everyone else move freely while I pounded on invisible walls. I sat up disoriented and noticed something different. The door was open, not wide, just a crack. But there was no shadow in the hall, no sound of breathing, no familiar silhouette blocking my path. My pulse thundered in my ears. They'd gotten careless. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, every muscle tense, waiting for the door to slam shut again. It didn't. I reached the doorway, pushed gently, and stepped into the hallway. The air outside the room felt shockingly fresh, even though it was just the stale basement air. My senses were on fire. I could hear the faint rumble of the refrigerator upstairs, the distant bark of a dog outside a car driving past. I took a step, and another. The stairs were to my left. I could see the faint light from the ground floor. Somewhere above my life still existed photos on the wall, clothes in the closet, the mug with my initial on it. Somewhere my phone existed, too silent and locked away. Freedom was 12 steps away. I had made it to the third step when I heard it, the creak of a floorboard above voices. "Did you lock the door downstairs, Donna?" "Yes," Andrew's voice replied, "of course." "I thought I heard something." "You're paranoid, Mom." I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run back to the room. But another part of me, the part that had started to sharpen, instead of dull, whispered, "You're already out, don't waste it." Their footsteps moved toward the kitchen away from the basement door. I could hear the clink of dishes, the rush of water from the sink. I backed silently down the stairs, but instead of retreating into the room, I slipped into the narrow utility space beside it, a cluttered area filled with boxes and old tools. From there, I could see the bottom of the stairs hidden in shadow. I waited a minute. 2-5. My legs shook. Sweat trickled down my spine. Finally, the basement door at the top of the stairs opened. Light spilled down the steps. Andrew's shoes appeared first, then his legs, then the rest of him. He walked down frowning faintly. The room door was still ajar. He pushed it open, stepped inside, and swore under his breath when he saw the bed empty. "Harper," he called, voice sharp. "Harper." I held my breath. He turned around, scanning the hallway, eyes narrowed. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows, praying he wouldn't notice the slight gap in the boxes where I was hiding. His gaze passed over my hiding spot and moved on. He cursed again, louder this time. "Mom, she's not here." Panic flared in Donna's voice from upstairs. "What do you mean she's not there? She couldn't have gotten past us." He stomped back up the stairs, leaving the basement deserted again. The door slammed. The bolt at the top clicked. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They thought I was loose in the house or gone. That bought me time. It was in that cramped utility space, surrounded by dusty boxes and spider webs, that I saw my first real hope. A small gray metal box on the wall. The router? I stared at it, my mind racing. It was stupid. It was desperate. But it was something. The router meant Ethernet cables. Cables meant potential access. If not to the internet, then maybe, just maybe, to something else. And suddenly an old memory surfaced, Andrew bragging at a dinner party about installing a private network for his home office, isolated from the main Wi-Fi, he'd said. More secure for patient files. If that network was tied into this hub, there might be a connection. If there was a connection, there might be a device. And if there was a device, I started digging through the boxes, hands shaking. Somewhere above me, my captors were searching for me. They thought I was a panicked animal loose in their clean, controlled world. For the first time, I felt like a hunter instead, because if I could find a way to connect to the outside world, even for 5 minutes, I knew exactly who I would reach out to. Mia, the one person who had never believed I just walked away, and the only person who, once she heard from me, would burn the world down to find me. The boxes smelled like dust and old cardboard and something metallic underneath it all. Rust, maybe? I shoved them aside, searching for anything that looked like a lifeline. Router cables, power strip, and then tucked behind a stack of Christmas decorations and a broken fan, I saw it a slim silver laptop in a padded black case, half-zipped. Andrew's old work laptop. My heart jerked so hard I felt dizzy. My hands shook as I dragged the bag toward me. For a moment I hesitated, listening. Footsteps slammed around upstairs. Doors opened and closed. Donna shouting, "Check the garage." The backyard. They still thought I was upstairs. I didn't know how long that would last. I took the laptop out and popped it open. The screen lit up a faint blue glow in the dark of the utility space. It felt like looking into another universe. Enter password. Of course! I bit down on a curse. Andrew was smart paranoid. I doubted he used password 123, but he was also arrogant. I typed A. Wilson, then Andrew Wilson, then Harper and Andrew. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Come on, I whispered, mind racing. He was a doctor, obsessed with his image, loved his credentials, his ego, his pride. I tried Andrew, then Wilson MD, then Dre Wilson MD. Access denied. My stomach knotted. I didn't have time for this. I forced my brain to stop panicking and remember Andrew at his desk late at night. The way his fingers flew over the keys. Offhand comments. Can't forget my password. It's literally my life. His life. His identity. I tried his national provider identifier number. I didn't remember the whole thing, but I remembered he'd once made a stupid joke about the last 4 digits being great poker cards. 2 queens and 2 eights. Something could. I stared at the keyboard. What if it wasn't the NPI itself, but something easier? I typed Der Wilson Qs. The login screen blinked. Welcome. I nearly sobbed with relief. The laptop's desktop loaded, cluttered with folders. Case files, research, personal taxes. I didn't have time to snoop. I needed one thing, a connection. The Wi-Fi icon in the corner had a red X through it, no network. But when I clicked it, a list of networks popped up. Wilson, Private Wilson, Guest, Home Office, Secure. My eyes burned. Home Office, Secure. That had to be Andrew's private network. But they'd shut off the usual Wi-Fi. They knew Wi-Fi meant potential contact. Andrew had bragged about creating something isolated for his work. But if it was truly isolated, why was it showing up here in the basement? He'd either lied or cut corners. I clicked on Home Office Secure. Enter network password. Of course. I swallowed a hysterical laugh. Second password, fine think. He didn't expect anyone but himself to ever use this. He liked to recycle things to show off the systems he'd built. I tried Dre Wilson MD again. Access denied. I stared at the blinking field, mind racing. What did Andrew love most? Himself. His title, his status. I typed Wilson MD. The icon spun. Connected. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a browser window popped up, asking if I wanted to restore previous tabs. I clicked no. I opened a new tab. My fingers hovered over the keys. I could email the police. The hospital. A hotline. But there was one person I trusted to believe me without hesitating, without letting Andrew talk circles around her. I typed in the web address for a simple webmail client I used for freelance work years ago and Andrew didn't know about. Miraculously, the login was autosaved. When my inbox loaded, I almost cried. I had 23 unread messages, brand deals, spam old newsletters, all proof that the world had kept spinning without me. New message. To Mia. Subject, help me. My hands hovered over the keyboard, suddenly clumsy. I didn't have time for poetry. I didn't have time to explain the whole story I had. Maybe a few minutes before Andrew thought to check the basement again, I wrote, Mia, it's Harper. I am in the basement of my own house. Andrew and his mom have locked me in a room for weeks, months. They're telling everyone I'm at a mental health retreat. It's a lie. I'm on his old laptop connected to his home office network. If this reaches you, please call the police. Tell them I am being held against my will at our address. I am not unstable. He's drugging me. I need you to believe me. If you come here, don't come alone. Bring police. Don't let him talk. Please. Harper. My fingers flew over the keys. I hit send. The loading bar crawled across the screen. Sent. I stared at the small, simple word like it was the sun. Something crashed upstairs. Donna shouting, Andrew cursing. They'd realized I wasn't on the first floor. Basement, Donna yelled. My heart lurched. I slammed the laptop shut, stuffed it back into the bag, and shoved the whole thing behind the boxes again. Then I ran. Not up the stairs. That would be suicide. Back into the room, my prison. I threw myself onto the bed and curled up just as the footsteps thundered down the stairs. The door flew open. Andrew burst in. Hair mussed, eyes wild for the first time since this started. Donna hovered behind him, breathless. Where were you? He demanded. I looked up at him, letting every ounce of my exhaustion and hatred show, but keeping my voice small. Right here. Don't play games with me, Harper. I got up to use the bathroom. I said, You forgot to lock the door. I came back. Congratulations. You left one tiny sliver of freedom, and I wasted it. His eyes flicked around the room bedchair table. He stepped inside, checked under the bed, opened the small closet, yanked the thin blanket off the mattress. Nothing. I forced myself not to look at the wall where the laptop was hidden. You're lying, he muttered. Maybe you're losing your mind, I said softly. All this caring for me must be stressful. He glared at me, chest rising and falling. For a second I thought he'd snap, hit me, drag me by the hair. Instead, he turned and stormed back out. Donna closed the door slower this time, her eyes lingering on me with a mix of suspicion and something that looked almost like pity. No, that couldn't be right. The bolt scraped shut. I lay there, heart pounding in my throat, listening. Minutes ticked by, or what felt like minutes. Then faintly through the layers of floor and air and drywall I heard it, a sound that didn't belong to this house. A car screeching to a halt. Another car, doors slamming, heavy purposeful footsteps, a deep male voice shouting, Seattle PD, open the door. For a moment I thought I'd imagined it. Then Donna screamed. The next 10 minutes were a blur of noise and adrenaline. The front door crashing open, angry voices, Andrew shouting, You can't come in here without a warrant, and someone replying. We have one, footsteps pounding overhead, Donna sobbing. This is a misunderstanding. The bolt at my door clanged. The door swung open. 2 police officers stood there filling the doorway. One was tall and broad-shouldered, dark hair, badge clipped to his belt. The other was a woman with sharp eyes and a tight ponytail. Behind them, Mia. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing her through a different lens now, framed by the doorway of my cell, her eyes wide, hand covering her mouth. Harper, she whispered. For a second, my body refused to believe what my eyes saw. My brain tripped over the distance between hope and reality. Then my knees gave out. The female officer lunged forward and caught me under the arms. Got you, she said. You're safe now. I laughed then, a broken, disbelieving sound, and clung to her like she was the only solid thing in the world. Andrew stormed into view behind them, face flushed. This is outrageous, he snapped. She's not well, I told you, she's been unstable. Sir, the male officer cut in, holding up a hand. We got an email from someone claiming to be your wife saying she was being held captive. We have legal grounds to investigate. That email could have been forged, Andrew said. She's delusional. She's been having episodes. Mia pushed past him and dropped to her knees beside me. Harper, look at me. I did. She took my face in both hands, eyes filling with tears. Tell them, she said softly. Tell them what they did to you. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt thick, but my voice when it came was clear. They locked me down here for months against my will. They drugged me. They took my phone. They told everyone I was crazy. The officers exchanged a look. Did they hurt you physically? The woman asked. Yes. My shoulder throbbed in phantom pain. He twisted my arm, pushed me, dragged me down the stairs. They forced pills into my mouth. Andrew scoffed. She's having another episode. She always exaggerates. The male officer stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to need you to stand back and keep your hands where I can see them. This is my house. And that may be your wife? The officer said. Potential victim of domestic imprisonment. We're taking her to the hospital for evaluation. If your story's true, you'll be fine. If hers is... He let the sentence hang. Donna sank against the wall, whispering, We were just trying to help her. She was unstable. You don't understand. The female officer helped me to my feet. My legs shook, but I stayed upright, leaning heavily on her. Mia slipped an arm around my waist. I've got you, she murmured. You're getting out of here. As they led me up the stairs, past the gray walls and familiar hallway, and the front door that had been so close, yet so impossibly far away, I looked back. Andrew stood at the bottom of the stairs, fists clenched, jaw tight, eyes burning into me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, voice hoarse but steady, If I'm crazy. Andrew, what are you so afraid of? He didn't answer. He didn't have to, because as I crossed the threshold into daylight surrounded by uniforms and a best friend who refused to believe the pretty lies, I knew something with crystal clarity. The old Harper had died down there, but the one walking out, she wasn't going to stop at survival. She wanted justice. And if she was honest, just a little bit of revenge? They took me straight to the hospital, not the one where Andrew worked. Mia insisted on that. Different institution, she told the paramedics. No conflict of interest. No colleagues who can vouch for him. The emergency department smelled like antiseptic and overbrewed coffee. Bright light stabbed my eyes after so long in that basement room. Nurses in pastel scrubs moved quickly, their faces a blur of concern and efficiency. Name, Harper Wilson. Any injuries? Old ones. Bruises my shoulder. Any medications? Ones I didn't consent to. They drew blood. Took photos of my bruises, documented the marks on my wrists and the faint yellow-green remnants of older injuries. A social worker came in soft voice, kind eyes asking if I felt safe, if I had somewhere to go. Mia never left my side. While a nurse wrapped an elastic bandage around my shoulder, Mia leaned in close. You're not going back there, she whispered. I don't care what he says. I don't care what story he spins. I will chain myself to your bed if I have to. I laughed weakly. You always were dramatic. I learned from the best. A detective arrived a few hours later. Detective Ramirez, late 30s, sharp gaze expression that suggested he'd seen more than his fair share of human ugliness. He pulled a plastic chair up beside my bed and flipped open a notebook. First of all, he said, I'm sorry you went through that. Second, I need you to tell me everything you remember. Dates, details, conversations, anything. Where is he now? I asked. Your husband. We brought him in for questioning, Ramirez said. He claims you're mentally unstable, that you asked to be kept under supervision after a threat of self-harm. He says the medication was prescribed and that you agreed to it. He also insists the room was secure but not locked. His mouth twisted and that his mother was just helping. Rage flared in my chest. He's lying, I figured, Ramirez said calmly. Thing is, in cases like this, it often comes down to your word against his. Unless we find evidence, so I need your help finding it. I took a deep breath, okay. I told him everything. About the argument over my job. About the first time Andrew twisted my arm. About the room with no windows and bolt on the outside. About the pills forced down my throat. The fake check-ins, the notebooks. About hiding the medication in the mattress. About the unlocked door, the laptop, the email. When I mentioned the laptop, Ramirez's eyes sharpened. You sure it's down there? Yes, behind some boxes in a black bag. He scribbled something down. We already have a warrant to search the property. If that computer shows the email trail, the network connection, anything that contradicts his story. It proves I'm not crazy, I finished for him. It proves you're a victim of unlawful imprisonment and potential medical abuse, Ramirez said. But yeah, that too. Mia reached for my hand and squeezed. They'll find it, she said. We're not in one of those cases where it's just vibes and tears. You were smart, Harp. You left a trail. For the first time in a long time, I let myself feel something close to pride. I hadn't just survived, I had fought back. The laptop was exactly where I'd left it. Later, much later, I would see photos in the case file. The gray utility space, the wall of boxes, the black bag peeking out, and the close-up of the email I'd sent to Mia timestamped and traced to Andrew's home network. There were other things too. The officers found the pill bottle nearly half full with my name on the label, but prescribed months earlier for a brief bout of anxiety after my father's death. Not for any recent episode. They found marks on the outside of the room door where the bolt had scraped the wood. They found my phone in Andrew's office drawer, powered off with dozens of missed calls from Mia and my boss and a few other friends. They found a notebook. It wasn't mine. It was Andrew's. Neat clinical handwriting, dated entries, lines like, Harper highly reactive today. Cried for extended period after brief discussion of returning to work. Demonstrates inability to self-regulate. Critical of my suggestions. Consider increasing dosage. Refuses to acknowledge how I've helped her. Still fixated on independence and external validation. Reading it for the first time made me feel physically ill. He'd turned my pain into data, my fear into pathology, my resistance into evidence of instability. But it was also proof that he'd assumed the role of a doctor where he had no right to. Proof that he'd seen me as a case to manage, not a wife to love. The DA decided to press charges. Multiple charges. Unlawful imprisonment assault. Unlawful administration of a controlled substance. Coercive control. Newer to the statute but growing teeth in domestic cases like mine. Donna was charged as an accomplice. The first time I saw them again was at the arraignment. I walked into the courtroom on unsteady legs, Mia and my attorney Kara flanking me like bodyguards. Andrew sat at the defense table in a crisp navy suit, hair perfectly styled, jaw clean-shaven. To anyone else, he could have been a high-powered surgeon, ready to deliver expert testimony. Donna sat beside him, looking smaller than I remembered, her hair less perfect, hands twisting in her lap. Andrew saw me and smiled, a slow, pitying smile. I met his eyes and did not look away. The judge read the charges. The prosecutor spoke about the email, the room, the notebook, the laptop. The defense attorney tried to frame it as an unconventional but well-intentioned mental health intervention gone wrong. Andrew pled not guilty. Of course he did. Afterward, in the hallway, reporters swarmed, microphones, cameras, shouts. Harper, did your husband ever show violent tendencies before this? Do you feel the system failed you? Is this a case of medical power being abused? I said nothing. Kara did, though, with polished precision. My client was imprisoned and abused by the man she trusted most. We believe this case will send a clear message that mental health cannot be used as a smokescreen for control and violence. We rode the elevator down in silence. When the doors opened into the parking garage, someone stepped forward with a camera slung around his neck. Harper Wilson, he asked. I tensed. Who's asking? He extended a card. Ben Larson, investigative reporter I've been covering. Abuse of power in the medical field for the last 3 years. I think your story ties into something bigger. Bigger, I repeated. He nodded. Your husband's name came up in another story. A patient's complaint quietly settled. I'd like to talk. Off the record at first, if you're willing. If you're. I looked at his card, then at Mia, then at Kara. Kara sighed. No statements without me there, she said. But it might help public pressure. Mia bumped my shoulder. You wanted justice, she murmured. This is how you make it loud. I stared at Ben's earnest face, at the logo on his press badge, at the recorder in his hand. For months, my world had been a room with no windows, a locked door, one overhead light. Now it was microphones and cameras and courtrooms and files and evidence. If I was going to step fully back into this world, I didn't want to come back quietly. Okay, I said, let's talk. What we uncovered over the next few weeks horrified me. Andrew had a pattern. A nurse from his old hospital, anonymous at first, voice distorted in Ben's recordings, spoke about how Andrew had been reported for oversedating certain patients. an elderly woman whose daughter claimed one of Andrew's colleagues had tried to warn her about questionable behavior. A former patient who'd felt groggy and confused after a minor procedure and later learned she'd been given an unusually high dose of sedative. None of it had stuck. Hospitals protect their golden boys. Complaints were quietly resolved. Miscommunications, documentation errors. But now, with my case under the microscope, people started coming out of the shadows. One woman, Melissa, agreed to go on the record. She sat across from me in a coffee shop downtown, hands wrapped around a paper cup like it was an anchor. She was in her 30s, hair pulled back, tired eyes. 4 years ago, she said, I went in for a routine outpatient procedure. Your husband was the anesthesiologist. I woke up feeling wrong. Not just groggy, like I'd been dropped into the wrong body. I had bruises on my arms. I couldn't explain. When I asked questions, the nurses got cagey. The surgeon said everything was normal. But one nurse, she looked at me with this guilt. Her throat worked as she swallowed. I filed a complaint, Melissa continued. Next thing I knew, I was getting calls from the hospital risk management department telling me it was just a side effect, that I didn't understand the medication. They implied I was overreacting, that maybe my anxiety was making it worse. My chest tightened. They gaslit you. Yeah, her laugh was humorless. Gaslighting seems to be his specialty. Ben recorded everything, Kara reviewed every sentence, mapping it against what would be admissible. We weren't just building a case against Andrew for what he'd done to me. We were tearing off his mask. Every new piece of information made me feel two things at once: nauseous that I'd ever loved him, and fiercely determined not to let him do this to anyone else. One evening, as I sat at Mia's kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and notes, Mia set a mug of tea in front of me and said, "You know what your power is, right?" What I asked. "You remember," she said simply. "You remember details. Most people, trauma fuzzes everything out. You cataloged it." "I cataloged it so I wouldn't forget who I was," I said softly. "So I wouldn't start believing his version of me." She squeezed my shoulder. "Now you're going to use that to destroy his version of himself." The trial date was set for late autumn. By then, the story had broken wide open. Ben's article titled "When Care Turns to Control," the doctor who locked his wife away, went viral. Public opinion polarized instantly. Some people sided with me. Others said it sounded too extreme. Why didn't she just leave? They typed from the safety of their intact, unlocked homes. But the noise, the attention, it all had one crucial effect. The system had to take me seriously. There would be no quiet plea deal, no swept under the rug negotiation. This was going to court, and I was going to testify. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are countless real-life betrayals, twists, and revenge stories waiting for you in the next episodes. The day I testified, it rained. Seattle rain. Thin, steady, almost polite. The kind of rain Andrew used to say was soothing. The kind of rain I'd listen to through concrete and drywall, wondering if it would ever touch my skin again. I stood in front of the courthouse, Mia at my side, Kara at my other, and tilted my face up for a second before we went in, letting the droplets cool my cheeks. "You ready?" Mia asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." She grinned faintly. That's my girl. Inside the courtroom was all wood and silence and contained tension. The judge sat like a carved statue. The jury, 12 strangers who held the weight of my future in their hands, shifted in their seats. Andrew sat at the defense table, tailored suit pressed. Expression carefully. Neutral. Only his eyes betrayed him. They were too bright, too sharp, following every move I made. Donna looked older. Smaller. Her hands trembled in her lap. At one point, our eyes met, and for a second, I saw something like remorse there. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The bailiff called my name. I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like they were made of glass, swore to tell the truth. Sat down. The microphone in front of me looked huge and ridiculous. "Ms. Wilson." The prosecutor, Angela Reed, began. "Can you tell the court how your marriage was in the months leading up to your confinement?" I took a breath, and I told them, not just about the room and the pills and the locked door, but about the slow erosion before that, the way he'd chipped away at my confidence with tiny comments, the isolation from friends, the control of money, the concern that always came with a thread of condescension. I watched the jury's faces as I spoke. Some leaned forward. One woman wiped her eyes. A man in the back frowned, arms crossed skeptical. I spoke directly to him when I said I didn't just leave, because you don't realize you're in a cage until the door slams shut. And by then you might already have started believing that you locked it yourself. Angela guided me through the timeline, the argument about my job, the first time he grabbed me, the arrival of Donna, the descent into the basement. A few times my voice shook, my throat closed, but every time I faltered, I remembered that room, the smell of dust and fear, the sound of the bolt, and I kept going. Then it was the defense's turn. Andrew's lawyer, a man with 2 white teeth and a too smooth voice, approached the stand. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, emphasizing Mrs. as if reminding me of some duty, "you've described a very intense sequence of events. Would you agree that your emotions at the time might affect your recollection?" "No," I said, "I remember because it was intense. Trauma doesn't always erase. Sometimes it etches things in stone." He smiled faintly. "Of course. And yet you can't provide exact dates for some of these events, can you?" "I had no calendar," I replied. "No clock, no phone. So no, I can't tell you whether it was June 2nd or June 3rd when he twisted my arm. I can tell you exactly how it felt." He shifted tactics. "You've had anxiety in the past, haven't you?" he asked. "You were prescribed medication before all this happened." "Yes. After my father died briefly." "And you've seen therapists?" "Yes. Like millions of people. So mental health concerns are not new to you. Neither is functioning at a high level," I said evenly. "Hold 2 truths in your mind at once. You seem clever enough." A few jurors hid smiles. The lawyer's mouth tightened. "Is it possible that your husband misunderstood your cries for help as something that justified drastic action?" "Misunderstood," I repeated. "No, he weaponized them. There's a difference." He paced slowly. "You claim you were forced to take medication, but blood tests at the hospital showed only traces of the drug, not current levels. Because I started hiding the pills. I said I spit them out, tucked them in the mattress. You've seen the photos." He flicked his eyes to his notes, then back to me. "It sounds like you were very resourceful." "I had to be, my life depended on it." He leaned in slightly. "Mrs. Wilson Harper, do you hate your husband?" The question knocked the air out of me for a second. "Yes," I said finally. "I do. Now, hatred can color perception," he said gently. "Hatred can come from perception," I replied. "You're looking at cause and effect backwards." Angela objected. The judge sustained. The questioning moved on. By the time I stepped down from the stand, my legs were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline, from relief, from knowing that regardless of what 12 strangers decided, I had stood in the light and said, "This happened to me, to the person I used to be." They couldn't lock that back up. Other witnesses followed. The detective. The officers who'd found me. The nurse who'd documented my injuries. Melissa, the former patient, brave and trembling as she described her experience with Andrew's over-sedation. Even Donna, she took the stand in a beige cardigan, hands twisting a tissue. At first she tried to hold the line. "We were worried about her," she said. "She was emotional, irrational. Andrew only wanted what was best." "Did you ever consider calling a licensed mental health professional?" Angela asked. We thought Andrew could handle it," Donna said. "He is not a psychiatrist, is he?" "No." "Did Harper ever say the words, 'I want to be locked in this room'?" Donna faltered. "No. But sometimes people don't know what they need." "Did you ever unlock the door to let her leave if she chose to?" Her eyes filled with tears. "We couldn't. She would have left." We weren't done helping her. Silence settled over the courtroom. Angela let it stretch, then said quietly, "So you knew she didn't want to be there and you kept her anyway?" Donna looked at me then. Our gazes met. Her voice broke. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, we did." In that moment, I believed she was sorry. I also knew that sorry wasn't enough. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Those 48 hours stretched longer than the 3 months in the basement. I paced Mia's living room. I sat on her couch, knees to my chest, watching rain streak her windows. I answered texts from people I hadn't heard from in years, some apologizing for believing Andrew, some admitting they hadn't known what to think, some just sending heart emojis. and I'm here if you need anything. Mia kept me fed. Kara kept me updated. Ben kept sending me drafts of another article. This one focused on how domestic abusers misuse psychiatric language to mask control. When the call finally came, my hands went numb. "We have a verdict," Kara said. "They want you there." The courtroom felt smaller this time, more crowded, the air thicker. The judge took his seat. The jury filed in, faces carefully blank. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor," the foreperson replied. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. On the count of unlawful imprisonment, the judge read, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Andrew Wilson." I held my breath. Guilty. The word hit me like a physical blow. My knees went weak. Mia's hand found mine under the table and squeezed so hard it hurt. On the count of assault in the 4th degree, guilty. On the count of unlawful administration of a controlled substance, guilty. For Donna, the verdict was different. Not guilty on assault. Guilty on unlawful imprisonment as an accomplice. When the judge set the sentence weeks later, some people thought it wasn't enough, that Andrew should have gotten more years, that Donna should have gone away longer. I watched the bailiff put handcuffs on Andrew's wrists, watched the brief flicker of panic in his eyes as the clang of metal closed around him. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. Light. Not joy, not yet. But light, because those cuffs weren't on me. Because he wasn't walking out of this courtroom into the sunshine. Healing is not cinematic. No dramatic montage. No inspirational soundtrack. No sudden morning where you wake up and think, "Oh, I'm fine now." It's paperwork and therapy and nightmares and sudden stupid things that make you cry in the grocery store because the overhead lights remind you of hospital corridors, or because someone's cologne smells like the soap in the basement bathroom. It's sitting across from a therapist describing what happened and hearing her say, "That was torture," and realizing she's right. It's sleeping in Mia's guest room for months, because the thought of living alone terrifies you. But so does the thought of living with anyone else. It's relearning basic trust, starting with trusting yourself. One of the first decisions I made once I had enough breath in my lungs to think beyond day-to-day survival was this. I was going to tell my story, all of it, on my terms. I started a blog, a simple stripped-down site. No ads, no sponsorships, just words. I called it The 3 Months I Vanished. The first post was short. "My name is Harper. Last year, my husband locked me in a room for 3 months and told everyone I'd left to get help. This blog is not about him. It's about what happens when someone tries to rewrite your reality and how you take the pen back." I wrote about the subtle red flags I'd ignored, the ways controlling behavior can look like concern, the tricks abusers use when they have medical authority or financial power or social status. I wrote about the basement carefully, piece by piece, in digestible fragments so I didn't re-traumatize myself. I wrote about the trial, the journalists, the strange, surreal experience of becoming a case to be studied, debated, argued over. And people wrote back. Emails poured in, comments, messages, from women who said, "My husband never locked me in a room, but he did cut off my access to money and tell my family I was unstable." From men who said, "My partner used my depression against me, telling everyone I was dangerous whenever I tried to assert myself." From people who said, "I didn't realize what happened to me was abuse until I read your words." I started hosting small online support groups, video calls with faces arranged in little squares, each one carrying their own story of control and escape. We cried, we laughed, we compared notes on red flags and safety plans and lawyers. Ben kept writing too. His series on abuse of power in medicine sparked policy reviews at several hospitals, new reporting standards, mandatory training. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. One afternoon, months after the verdict, I walked alone for the first time in a neighborhood I didn't share with anyone from my old life. It was a clear day. Brisk, the kind of cold that wakes you up. I passed a small bookstore and on impulse went in. The bell over the door chimed. The smell of paper and ink wrapped around me like a gentle hug. On a table near the front, a stack of magazines was fanned out. One of them had a headline, "The New Face of Coercive Control. When Care Becomes Captivity." Underneath a small photo of me looking straight into the camera, I picked it up. Read the first few lines. Recognized my own quotes from an interview I'd almost backed out of 3 times. Then I put it down, not because I was ashamed, because I knew the story now. Intimately, I didn't need to rehear it to believe it. A young woman behind the counter glanced up. Her eyes widened slightly, then flicked to the magazine, then back to me. "Are you?" she began, then seemed to catch herself. "Sorry, that's probably weird. You just look familiar." I considered lying. Instead, I nodded. "Yeah," I said, "that's me." She hesitated, then said quietly, "My sister. She went through something. Not the same, but similar enough. Your blog helped her. Helped me help her." Something in my chest loosened. "How is she now?" Leaving the cashier said. A small, fierce smile tugged at her lips. "Packing her stuff while he's at work. Coming to live with me. She finally believes it's not her fault." I swallowed hard. "Good," I said. "That's good." As I walked out of the store, the bell chimed again. The sky was still gray, the air still cold, but inside something felt warm. Andrew had taken 3 months of my life, 3 months of sunlight and choice and movement. He had tried to turn me into a patient, a problem, a diagnosis. He had underestimated one crucial thing. I am the narrator, not him, not anymore. As I turned the corner toward home, phone buzzing in my pocket with a new email notification. Another woman, another story. I thought about that room in the basement, the locked door, the overhead light, and I realized something. He had built that room to contain me. Instead, it had forged me, because down there in the quiet and the darkness, I had done 3 things he could never control. I had observed, I had remembered, and I had planned. Now, every time I publish a new story, mine or someone else's, it feels like sliding another bolt open, not on a door. On a whole world of cages people are told are for their own good. No one gets to lock me up again. Not in a room, not in a story, not in their version of who I am. Those 3 months I vanished. They are the reason I am visible now.